Today I'm rating 5 famous streamers Elden Ring builds from 1 to 10. Yes, you heard that right. I'm going to be taking 5 streamers and pinning each of their Elden Ring builds against a new game plus Rolana. All to see how they do in each of our 3 criterias. I'll explain as we go, but let's get straight into the rating. We're starting with RTGame. Let's jump straight into the testing so we can get into our criteria and rating as fast as we can. At a glance, I knew I could play this build a lot of ways. RTGame's build is centered around bleed, so I was leaning towards using lighter attacks to get an accurate feel of the build, because light attacks are quicker and proc bleed faster. But given the fact that we're dealing with a big ass hammer with insane bleed scaling, the bleed buildup is easily strong enough to still provide value even with the slower attack rate of charge heavies. So I knew I could use any and all parts of the moveset and get equal value in testing. And I also want to try out Horolu's Earthshaker to see how it does. Getting into actual testing, I have to say, I know I could pop the Thug Shaker here and immediately decimate the crawlers, but I wanted to save my focus points for when the bald lady actually fell down so I could test more of the moveset on the actual boss. And as soon as she fell down, we immediately tested the jump attack on her and did some huge damage to her. And the charged heavy single-handedly took out like a quarter of her entire health. I followed through with the non-charged heavy, and it did like 3 damage more than the jump attack. I gotta say, jump attacks require less of an opening, and in some cases, no opening at all. If you aren't going for a charge heavy, it seems like the play is just to spam jump attacks. We ended our first phase with a decent light attack and we immediately hit her with the Earthshaker Ash of War, which did a really good amount of damage. This thing had hardly any wind-up time and has a follow-up where it does a second one with no wind-up time. Then we ended the fight with testing some of the running attacks. I've got a lot to say about RTGame's build. Let's start touching on how it does in our criteria. Our first criteria for every build will be creativity. How original is the build and how efficiently did you make the multiple moving parts of this build work together? If you do good in this, you'll get a high score in creativity, and RTGame scores low in this criteria. I give RTGame a 4 out of 10 in creativity. I haven't seen a lot of people use the Infernal Crozer, and it's actually a pretty cool weapon now that I've tried it. And the addition of Horolu's Earthshaker isn't something I see a lot either. I actually think the Infernal Crozer's Ash of War is really good, but after trying the Earthshaker, I can see why RTGame went with it. The Earthshaker is a sleeper pick, and more people should try it out, but most of his talismans are just so run-of-the-mill and don't really work together with each other in any meaningful way. He has the Strength Talisman and the Bleed Talisman to enhance his weapon's performance, but other than that, his talismans just kind of provide general buffs. This build isn't that original, and it has a lot of good puzzle pieces, but they just need to be put together right. But RT does better in our next criteria. Fun is the second criteria we're rating each build on. Am I having a hoot and a holler while working your build? If so, you score high in fun. RTGame actually does pretty good in this criteria. RTGame gets a solid 8 out of 10 in the fun department. Despite what the Elden Ring Virginity 99 Turbo Virgins want you to think, it's extremely fun to feel powerful in a game, and this build completely accomplishes that. You're literally walking around with a huge hammer that's almost the size of you, whacking people like you're Bugs Bunny. If you're really trying to tell me that isn't fun, it's fine. I understand not everyone can handle the unbridled masculinity of such an act. It's a good thing they have Roblox adopt me for kiddos like you. The real men will be over here whacking women with hammers. And not to mention Horolu's Earthshaker. That Ash of War is so much fun. Some random guy called it Horolu's Rump Shaker for a reason. I mean, what other build lets you walk up to a boss and kill it purely by throwing it back? I was shaking my shit so good I expected that bitch to start throwing money at me. Walk into this fight blasting some rock music and you'll feel like an unstoppable force. I'm telling you, this build is a rip-roaring good time. But do you know what else this guy does absolutely fantabulous? Viability, which is our third and final criteria. Does your build actually work and does it pack any real power? If it does, your build is going to score hella high here. And RTGame scores very high here. I give him an 8 out of 10 in viability. This build isn't perfect, but it's still good. The Crozer is such a solid weapon. It has a good bleed scaling and an amazing moveset with a charge heavy that sends people flying. And just the fact that I'm carrying this huge hammer around makes me feel even more powerful. I feel like my testosterone shoots up whenever I'm holding this thing. Like I'm gonna go around crushing everyone with my huge hammer, and I'm not gonna let anyone have anything to say about it. I was walking into the Rolana fight like, listen Rolana, thank you for having your daughter so I can goon to her. But I'm gonna proceed to violently beat you with a hammer now, and you're not gonna do anything about it. Let's move on to the final score. When it comes to the final score, RTGame has a solid build that's a healthy mix of strength and bleed. The Crozer is an absolute blast to use, with super good bleed scaling and a pretty awesome moveset. The Crozer is also boosted by this bleed talisman and this strength talisman. The Crozer fits really good into this build, and another thing that fits really good into this build is Horalu's Earthshaker. I'm not trying to regurgitate what I said in viability, but the Earthshaker is super strong with really good range, and it also has such a short setup that it's hard to deny that it's awesome. But is RT's score awesome? Well, well, well. Call me IGN, because I give it a 7. Just kidding. He gets like an 8. Like I said, it's a super solid build with a super fun weapon and an Ash of War that gets me rock hard. But there are a couple of places it fails to be amazing, mainly the talismans. There's so much you can do with talismans, and RT just chooses some really underwhelming ones. I'm not completely against the Viridian Amber Medallion or Erdtree's Favor since he has a colossal weapon, and those just eat through stamina. But I really think he should choose between one of them. And if he goes for the Viridian Amber, I think he should at least get a level 2. And to be honest, I think what carries the most weight in this build is the high bleed scaling of the Crozer. So I would focus on that a little more instead of the strength scaling of the Crozer. So we really don't need the Star Scourge Heirloom. He's already at 65 strength. He reached the first soft cap. It'll be fine. So I would replace the Heirloom with a Dragon Crest Great Shield. And I would throw out the Viridian Amber Medallion for a Rotten Winged Sword Insignia. The Dragon Crest Great Shield will give him some huge damage reduction that's just good for any build. And the Rotten Winged Sword Insignia will complement the fact that he's leaning into bleed by boosting his successive attack power. RT, your build is awesome, but do that and you'll have a super good build. And apparently, Ted isn't as talented with a bat as he claims, because our next streamer is Charlie Slimecicle. Why does this guy have a cancerous tumor hanging off the back of his head? This is the worst drip in the world. Ah yes, let me roll up to the function looking like Megamind. I'm aware his armor buffs his stats. It's still terrible drip though. But before we get into testing, I just have to make one thing abundantly clear. This is a build strongly built around Bubble Shower, which was nerfed to the ground. This Ash of War used to be pretty overpowered, so it's gonna look terrible in the testing. But I'm gonna be rating the build based on how good the Ash of War was in its heyday. So let's hop straight into testing. Going into testing, this build is obviously so hugely built around the Bubble Shower Ash of War, so I want to really use it to get a good feel for how the Slime Man played with his little bubble blower. Given the insane amount of buffs he has, we'll make sure to pop those pre-fight too. And I'm super excited to try out the Dragon Incantation and the Flame Pillar Incant. Just a heads up, I'm going in with infinite focus points so I can really test the builds and incantations as much as I want. My main priority is always to test the builds as much as possible, not to beat the boss or even do good against the boss. That's just not the point of the video. So if it disappoints you at all that I'm not fighting her legit, or if it looks like I'm not trying against the boss, it's because I'm not. This is a wrong video if you want to see that. Well, let's see how the build does against Rolana. Now that we're in the fight, we have to have our Anakin Skywalker moment so we can get that hairless hoe down. So I decide to try a pretty cool crowd control looking attack and pop Placidusa. Yup, that's definitely a crowd control attack. So I did it again. And holy zooey mama gee willikers, this is straight bonkers. I have a lot of jokes I can make right now about a lot of people being ended in one space at once, but in the name of self-preservation, I'm gonna withhold all of them. And once I tried Burno Flame, man, this was another sorcery that was concerningly good at icing these children. I know in the lore they probably aren't children, but I don't care, it's just more entertaining to call them that. And I just had to pop Placidusax's Ruin on Rolana. I was just doing a little trolling. I let Placidusax perform some more late-stage abortions, and then I popped Burno Flame on Rolana. And holy crap, it's effective. These are the only 2 attack incants Charlie has, and dare I say they're the only ones he needs. And then I just had to pull out Placidusax's Ruin again in the second phase. Look, I can't help it. She can't even get up. And then I actually popped Bubble Shower, and wow, that sucks. How the mighty have fallen. And then I finish it with the Envoy's Longhorn jump attack, which is fine. Let's just get into our criteria already. You gotta hear this. Alright, now time to rate Charlie. Charlie's build wasn't creative at all. He was making use of a super strong Ash of War in the early game's life cycle to just borderline cheese the game. Charlie gets a 5 out of 10 in creativity. Listen, the build was cool, but like I said, it's just some super meta build. Like, are you gonna give a pat on the back to someone who just threw on Hoarfrost Stomp at launch and beat the game with that? No! This gives the same vibe to me. It's just not original at all. I don't even know if he came up with it himself. But what's getting him the points in this category is the fact that everything in this build is working perfectly in tandem with each other. All of the talismans and incants are literally just there to make Charlie a one-shot god with this Ash of War. This guy just made a mini Comet Azura in this build. This is insane. So even though it's not original at all, he gets some points because the build works together so well. But when it comes to fun, one could say that this build is a hoot and a holler. This build is fun for the whole family, so I gotta give him a 10 out of 10 in fun. I know what you're gonna say. I didn't even experience this build how it was intended, and even if I did, it's just a one-shot build. How can that be fun? And to you I say, shut up, nerd. Placidusax's Ruin. Burn, flame, burn. Stupid bubble move I can't even remember the name of. I just absolutely love Placidusax's Ruin. I mean, it's literally a small nuke. And let me tell you about Burn, Flame, Burn. Did you see what it did to those kids? You guys not hitting your protein goals? Well, it's a good thing that babies are 300 grams of protein, and I can get like 8 newly cooked ones with 1 Burn, Flame, Burn incant. I know these incants weren't even the point of the build, but I don't care, it's my video, so I get to yap about what I want. And even the one-shot is fun, because when you try to get overpowered, it can easily kill the fun and progression of the game. But when you go far enough, it has the reverse effect, where it's just so comically powerful that it becomes fun just putting it together and seeing the absurdity of it. Once again, being powerful in video games is fun. Yeah, but like I said, he gets a out of 10 when it comes to fun. But in terms of viability, Charlie honestly doesn't do well. His build has so many issues and 10 out of 10. Yep, Charlie gets a 10 out of 10 in viability. What did you expect? Now listen, if we rated this build based on today's damage numbers, it wouldn't be doing so well. So I wouldn't run this build modern day, but when we throw ourselves into the Wayback Machine and look at this at a time-inclusive perspective, this build is literally the pinnacle of viability. He has every buff in the book to enable him to literally just one-shot enemies. This guy owns the viability criteria. We could bring up his attack spells, but it would be a waste. Dude already maxed out his viability score with just his Ash of War and talismans. We don't need to waste time, let's just get into the scoring. Which is, as you guessed, gonna be pretty damn good. Charlie's Slimecicle has a broken one-shot build with some insane attack incants, as well as every buff in the book. I gotta give Charlie a 9.5 out of 10. Charlie's build is super good, and I'd feel guilty giving it any lower, but it just has little to no originality. It really is just a generic one-shot build, and when it comes to advice to make it a 10, I literally have no idea, man. It's just not original, L+ ratio. But even though I can't give you build advice, go to your local Subway and order a Subway sandwich with Italian bread, but just put turkey and mayonnaise on it. This is my order. Trust me, a good Subway sandwich can change a man. I used to hate mayonnaise. Now I spend most of my days crouched in the corner of my room with a spoon and a jar of mayonnaise. Send me a picture of you with that sandwich, and I'll bump you up to a 10 Slimecicle. I'm sorry, audience. I want to keep my journalistic integrity, but every man has a price. Like and subscribe right now or this dog gets it.
Я собака и не хочу умирать, но если ты не подпишешься, я могу подписаться.
You heard him. All you need to do is press 2 buttons, and you spare this dog's life while also getting high-quality Soulsborne content.
Пожалуйста, сделайте это.
Wow, just 2 buttons to save a dog's life? Sounds like a pretty good deal to me. Next up, we have Mizkif, because I had to get at least one controversial figure for the thumbnail. I don't know anything about this guy other than the fact that he's so short he gets mogged by his door every time he walks in a room. This build looks like it's gonna be, interesting. So let's just get into testing. I'm already repulsed by what I see. I'm gonna hold back because Mizkif just gives the vibe of someone that might react to this video. This is a jump attack Bloodhound's finesse build. So we're mainly going to be using the weapon's ability and jump attacks. I already have opinions, but let's just get in and test. Here we are in testing. There is such little to talk about. Bloodhound's finesse is good. We know that. Look at that nice damage. Then we proceed to spam jump attacks and oh look, she's dead. Testing over, get me out of here. This build ain't it. But I will say, in the creativity department, no, 0 out of 10. This is so unoriginal and the only build coherence is a jump attack talisman. And the jump attacks were so mid in this testing, so like, who cares? Get out of my face, next criteria, which is fun. And the build gets a 2 out of 10 in fun. The Bloodhound's Fang in this build is literally screaming baby's first Elden Ring build. I mean, what a boring moveset. And added on to that, you use talismans that make you use like 2 moves in that boring moveset. This is proof I don't just like what's easy. I like powerful builds, but I want to feel powerful. When we're swinging a huge hammer and doing insane damage, Hell yeah. When we're wielding Guts' greatsword against enemies to murder them, hell yeah. But when I'm swinging around this goofy blade that looks like it wouldn't even pass the first round in Forged in Fire, the insane damage just doesn't feel earned. It's powerful, but I don't feel cool. It feels like I just turned on an accessibility option. This build isn't funny at all. Honestly, I had to give you pity points, Mizkif. Now when it comes to viability, Mizkif gets a 6 out of 10. The Bloodhound's Fang is an undeniably good weapon, but his talisman lineup sucks, and he's pigeonholing himself into using like 2 moves. Like, dude, this sucks. I'm tired of talking about this stupid build. Your build gets a 3 out of 10, Mizkif. He needed to fix this build so bad. Whenever he was having a hard time on a boss, this guy would literally just strip naked and think that was the auto-win strat. Like, dude, take out one of the middle 2 talismans and put the Shard of Alexander so your ability is stronger. Or do literally anything else. You know what? Just throw out the entire build and play with no weapons or armor. That's how the game's supposed to be played, Mizkif. Also, try out my Subway sandwich order. I'll bump you up to a 10 if you do that. Alright, now next up we got Nick Mercs. I hear this guy is pretty political. He said some stuff about transgenders apparently. But if you want to know my political opinions, I think Overwatch is better than Marvel Rivals. The only reason people play that game is so they can stare at Sue Storm's ass. And oh boy, we got a Lion's Claw Greatsword build. I'm slowly beginning to realize that strength builds might be the most overplayed build, even more than dexterity now. Let's just start testing. This build is obviously made to just spam the Lion's Claw, so that's exactly what we're gonna do. We're also gonna throw in some jump attacks because of the jump attack talisman. Let's get into the fight. As expected, the jump attack is putting in work. Once we get Rilana down, I start pummeling her with the greatsword, and she's a little too into it. How inconsiderate of her to try to get me demonetized like this. Rent is getting expensive in the lands between, and it takes a lot of time to make these videos. So if you find yourself enjoying this video, or if I got a chuckle out of you, consider leaving a super thanks. Every dollar helps me create high quality content like this for you guys, and it's a good way to guarantee I see your message. Anyways, I finished her first phase pretty quick with the jump attacks, and immediately started the second phase with the Lion's Claw. And holy zooey mama, call me G Willikers, that's a lot of damage. And we finished her pretty quick. Literally just ignored her attack. It wasn't even worth my attention. Anyways, let's get my thoughts out on this build. Nick Mercs has a strength build that I can't even knock. It hits like a truck. But when it comes to creativity, he gets a 5 out of 10. This build has literally no originality at all. It's some generic strength build that his chat probably told him to use. But I will say, everything in this build just comes together perfectly. Almost everything is working in harmony to make sure the greatsword is as good as it can be. And that's why he gets 5 points in creativity. And when it comes to fun, I gotta say it. Strength builds are pretty much always fun. He gets a 7 out of 10 in fun. You're doing obscene amounts of damage with this build, and it all feels earned. You aren't walking around with some overpowered stick and insta-killing bosses. No, you're striking down enemies with a blade that few men could carry, and even less can swing. It makes sense why I'm doing this amount of damage, and that's what makes it fun. It just turns me into a world-destroying monster, and it does an amazing job at that. I'm definitely starting to get tired of greatsword build, but I can't deny how much fun they are. And look at the way you move with the Lion's Claw. I mean, how do you not have fun when you're backflipping your enemies to death? And with viability, of course it's viable. Take a solid 9 in viability. You could get to 10, but there's some issues with your armor choices that could make it perfect. We'll get into that in the actual scoring, but the reason he scored so high was because this is genuinely just a crazy busted greatsword build. I mean, what do you want me to say? I know it's Rilana, but the fact that the Lion's Claw does this much damage is just insane. It's case closed. The only people who are going to disagree with this are FromSoft sexuals. This build is insanely viable, and you could make an easy argument for it getting a 10, but I didn't give it a 10. And let's get to the final scoring so you can see why. Nick Mercs has a pretty solid strength build that does absolutely insane damage, but it has a strong lack of originality and could be made better with some armor choices. Nick Mercs gets an 8 out of 10. The build is super strong, but I'm like 99% sure this guy got the build from chat. He was stuck on a boss and then went straight to everything he needed for the build, but I might be wrong. But even if I'm wrong, his build is just super unoriginal. And other than that, the only other thing I have to say is that he should throw on Raptor's black feathers so he can buff his jump attacks more. Alright, now I'm getting seriously sick of greatsword builds. If I see another greatsword, I'm gonna take it and shove it up my ass. But hey, at least it's in character. It's Tyler 1, I can't even be mad. Like, can you see him running anything else other than strength? Like, imagine him running an intelligence build. No, that just wouldn't fly. Well, let's get straight into testing. Okay, so he doesn't have anything that boosts a specific part of the moveset, so I'll just get the entire Greatsword moveset in, and I'll also make sure to work the Ash of War in there. This is a really general build that just kind of provides wide buff, so I can mostly do whatever I want and get away with it. Anyways, let's get into the fight. Yeah, so this was just another Greatsword testing. Did good against the kids, and even better against Rolana. This fight went super fast. Since he has no strong buffs to the Greatsword, it was dealing damage that was expected of a base Greatsword. It was more than enough to kill Rolana. To be honest, there's not a lot to talk about with this testing, so let's just get straight into my thoughts. So with Tyler 1's build, I gotta keep it a $150 with you guys. This is a 1 out of 10 in creativity. I like his armor choice, but the weapon isn't anything new or interesting. And I have to give him respect for the Lion's Claw, but it just isn't creative at all. I give him 1 point because I think his armor is a little wacky and funny. But other than that, I can't give Tyler anything else in this category. There's nothing in this build working together at all. But when it comes to fun, once again, strength builds are always fun. So I'm gonna give Tyler a 5 out of 10 in fun. There isn't anything super interesting about this build or even different from any other strength builds. But wielding a huge metal stick is just Chad activities. And the Lion's Claw is literally just aura farming of the highest caliber. You're actually backflipping someone to death. Anything that makes you feel more like Guts is an absolute W. So this may come off as me being a broken record, but yeah, Tyler's build is pretty fun. And when I'm talking viability, I give Tyler 1 a 6 out of 10. He accomplishes damage numbers that would be expected of a strength build, but this guy's talismans suck. I'll get into the specifics later, but the only thing that's keeping his score from touching the ground is the fact that he has a strong sword and Ash of War. If he didn't have these, I gotta keep it a $150 with you guys. You would have heard the sound of me my brains out live while playing this build, because this absolutely sucks. Tyler 1, overall, you made a pretty bad strength build, man. But there's so little moving parts with the strength build that it's still decent. It gives decent damage numbers, and I like the fact that your armor makes you look like whatever the hell it makes you look like. But you get a 6.5 out of 10. Listen up, man, I have no idea what these talismans are. And I know you're not staying at full health for most of the fight. So switch this talisman out for one that boosts your weapon skill or enhances your jump attack. I mean, you literally have this huge armor for the poise, I imagine. You're getting hit, buddy, and it looks like your build is bracing for that. I would also take out the arsenal charm because I doubt the armor is worth the talisman slot. But I think your armor is funny, so I'll let you off. Overall, man, the big issue is that this screams that you talk to women. And you should know that that doesn't fly in the Elden Ring community. So if you want to get accepted, you gotta abstain from all females. You gotta choose, man. A romantic life or Elden Ring skill. You can't have your cake and eat it. Finn, if you want me to rate the build of a streamer you like, go ahead and throw a good old suggestion in the comments. And if you want me to rate your build, then I really suggest you follow my Twitter, which is on screen right now. Any submissions or announcements will be hosted on there. If you liked the video, I would really appreciate it if you left a like and subscribed. It's free. And if you want to support me beyond that, super thanks are always open and hugely appreciated. We're growing bigger every day, and that's the best way to guarantee I see your message. And if this video made you mad, try to read between the lines a little more. Also, before I close it off, I've got some super exciting content coming up. I think you guys are gonna love it. And I think you guys would also love the first Elden Ring streamer build video if you like this one. It's on the screen right now, so go ahead and watch that. Toxic out.